Before you get into the real estate market, get clarity, perspective, and the information you need.
I've been listening to you, and I love your show.
Right here with broker owner Dan Gemus, host of the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the show. It's time for our landlord tip of the week with our good friend Patrice Surette from Goldmar Property Management. Hey, Patrice, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Well, fantastic. And listen, before we get to our topic or topics today, I need your answer. We've got our fun question today. What is your biggest home-related pet peeve? What's your biggest home-related pet peeve? What would you say, Patrice?
I would say when you hear a noise and you can't pinpoint where it's coming from.
Oh, you hope it's not a
and
leak.
it just takes you around the house. Yes. Well, yeah, at least. But just that noise, like not even a smoke detector, but just some kind of vibration or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and you walk around and it seems to be in every single room, even though it's in none of them.
Oh.
That, or I would have to say also a non-identified smell that you can't find either. Could be garbage, could be, yeah. So I would say
a dead something in the walls. It could be all kinds of things.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't know, right? Yeah. The noise in the wall could become the smell you can't identify.
That's right.
Yeah, one of those two for sure.
You hope it's something that you can identify pretty quickly and get it out of there for sure.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my goodness. So listen, from a landlord tip perspective, what are you seeing out there in the market the last few weeks? What do you are we seeing rents coming down some more, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, a little bit coming down, and just landlords watching other landlords and watching their price adjustments because, what used to be, maybe a higher end one bedroom is now becoming a really high one bedroom price. So they're having to drop it just to kind of be in competition with the others. So seeing a little bit more of that, being very aware of what your unit offers people, because I would say it's still kind of a tenant market right now as far as like selection on the market, especially in 2 bedrooms. Lots of choices. People are really being able to pick on, what's important to them, maybe choosing a unit with a dishwasher for convenience over having a laundry in their unit or parking, and they're actually, or making their checklists and they're really sticking to that, like what their must-haves are, because the prices are, coming down a little bit and they're able to be a bit more picky, I guess, because they have lots of choice. So I'm seeing that a lot.
Well, listen, after the last few years where, again, it was just so ridiculous. It was tough, right?
Yeah.
And listen, it is still difficult for tenants out there. Prices are still elevated compared to where they were pre-COVID,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But
for sure.
It's so tough.
Yeah.
Are you seeing, as you're getting applicants coming in for rental units, are you seeing difficulty getting approvals from landlords to put these tenants in their units?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So along with the price points, right? So our market is a little bit less because it's just to qualify and using the ratios for affordability. As the rents increase, people's incomes aren't increasing at the same. So we're trying to balance, used to be 33%. Now people are like 40, 45. And, landlords are gun shy because they're definitely, either had bad experience or they hear about these bad experiences. Still how long landlord tenant boards are taking. So they're being more and more selective as to who they put in the first place, which is great, on the back end, but the units are sitting empty longer because it's taking us longer to find a good qualified tenant that meets their criteria. Yeah. So,
and as we've talked about as well, the students not coming in, the out of country students not coming in, international students not coming in, right? It's having an effect for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. And again, that speaks to the inventory again, right? So there's a lot sitting. So it's just adding volume to the inventory in general in the city. Whereas those students used to take up a lot of that inventory and then, it would spill over. But now they're all empty too. So now people are looking at those and that might be a better price point. And they're, shying away from the higher price point ones. But it's all really a game of, watching your competition, knowing what your property's worth for sure out in the market, because the market is what dictates it, right?
No doubt.
So if we're not getting showings at that price point, they have to be fast to react and either do a reduction or offer a concession or some sort of incentive. And most landlords are pretty good at it too, and, watching, but some are just, disappointed in the response to their ads, right?
So any other tips for landlords, Patrice, aside from watching the competition, what else can a landlord do to attract a tenant? Are you seeing any landlords, including utilities that weren't before? Maybe you're trying that now, or what are you seeing out there?
No, utilities definitely not, because they're just so hard to control.
Yeah.
And with the cost of them, right? I mean, we're seeing some where they'll put utilities might be included with a cap. So it still incentivizes the tenants to conserve if they can.
Sure.
But they can get so out of control, right? You move somebody in and they have a bunch of people, a lot of kids. They get that first hydro bill, and hydro rates are up, water rates are up. So they get that first bill, and the landlords did not account for that high of a bill. So now they're actually upside down on it. So they tend to shy away from utilities for sure. What I'm not seeing so much, sometimes we would have extra charge for parking,
Sure.
right? And we're just not doing that now. So we might include the parking or include Wi-Fi. Some are including Wi-Fi, like
sure.
little incentives.
It adds up,
more
though.
than anything.
Right.
It does. Yeah, it's a savings of any kind, right? Some have done like a concession in the second month where it helps them pay for those hookup fees, or a moving expense, a little bit of a break on that. Some more creative, I guess, incentives and concessions, more so than including utilities.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, I think, is just trying to stay competitive, keep their price point up if they can. But we're also seeing a lot of landlords that revisit their property and be like, well, maybe we will paint, right? Or maybe, what's in it? What's the feedback? They're asking a lot more about what the feedback from people that see it are, right? And they're taking those comments very seriously, as far as maybe it needs a countertop, or, they don't like the way the entry to the unit sometimes, right? An exterior entrance, right? Maybe those stairs need to be looked at. So, they're spending a little bit of money just to improve based on what the feedback, because again, the market's dictating not only the price, but what that demand will be, right? And what people are looking for out there.
We have a text from a listener. Oh boy, this is a question we get quite a bit. How to handle a non-rent paying tenant?
Yes.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Oh, I've been there.
Well,
yeah.
You know what? Exactly. And the biggest advice is obviously to act fast with your forms,
Yeah.
right? With issuing the N4, because the 14 days starts when you issue it. So you want to not delay that.
But you know what happens though, Patrice? You know what happens is landlords, they feel they want to be nice, right? And so a tenant says, okay, you know what, Patrice, I just want an extra couple days. Can you just give me an extra couple days?
Yeah.
Sure, okay, not a problem. Then the next thing you know, a week goes by. Oh, I just need one more week and I'll have the full rent for you. Okay. Right. Next thing you know, you're a month in. You're behind a month and you haven't submitted your proper paperwork. So again, talk about that. Like at what point should a landlord submit the paperwork? What paperwork do they submit?
So you should issue, even if you have, a conversation with a tenant and you're agreeing to it in principle, you can still issue that N4 because that starts at 14 days. They can pay within that next week, but don't delay of issuing it, because it's all about timing, and the faster you get that paperwork issued, the better. So once that 14 days expires, you can still communicate with them. If they still say they're going to pay by that 14th day, great. It voids the N4, no harm, no foul, right? But if you haven't issued it, like you said, it could be a month, 6 weeks, and you're already behind 6 weeks now, right? So you want to issue it as soon as possible. You can do it on the 2nd. Like if they don't pay you on the 1st, that form can be issued on the 2nd, right? So then once that 14 days rolls by, maybe you've communicated, maybe you haven't. The next conversation is, I'm now in a position to file for a hearing, right? And then you can decide. But again, it's $186 to file with the Landlord Tenant Board for a hearing. It's the best money you'll ever spend if it leads you to a termination of a non-paying tenant. And if they end up agreeing to a payment plan and you save the tenancy, that's great too. They also owe you the $186.
I was going to say, they reimburse you that amount as well.
So right. So, I mean, it's still, yes, it's an output, it's a cost, but it's worth it. You get the hearing. The sooner you get that in, the sooner your hearing date will be. So if it's an absolutely non-paying tenant and they haven't made any effort to pay, at least you're a couple months instead of 6 or 8 months out.
Yeah,
right?
it goes so fast. People don't realize, right?
Oof. It really does. You just, next thing you know, you're charging another month's rent. Right. And rents are high. So again, what used to be a $600 or $700 rent over time is now a $1,500 over time. So 2 months that go by, you're $3,000 owing. And it gets to a point where, a couple months down the road, that's going to be a big amount of money that's very unlikely are going to recover.
Are you seeing any pressure coming off from the landlord tenant board with the amount of time it takes to get a hearing? Is it easing a little?
No, we're probably the same. Again, I always say better than before, better than during COVID, not as good as before COVID. Probably will never be that fast again, unfortunately, as much as they say they're putting all this money towards it. Yeah, I haven't seen any major improvements. And what's getting worse is the tenants that when you get the eviction and we're just a day or so away from enforcement with the sheriff, they're allowing the tenants to file for a stay, meaning that they get another hearing and another chance at a hearing. Yeah, it's really, really bad. And it's shameful because the amounts that people owe, they have no right to have another hearing. It's clear they're not going to pay. You know, now we're up into $20,000 in some cases. Why do they get 2 more months to live free, basically? Right? Nothing's going to change. In 2 months, you didn't pay this many, you know? So that's what's really bad now.
You probably have some tenants holding landlords hostage as well, saying, you know what, give me $10,000 and I'll get out of your unit.
Sure. On top of the 20 that they already owe. Like it's criminal, right? And one of my owners actually said that with this scenario, they owe a lot of money and the adjudicator awarded them another hearing. It was supposed to be in January. We were supposed to be able to enforce the sheriff and they got to stay and the next hearing is not till April.
Oh, geez.
And my landlord said that adjudicator should be charged criminally because, right, but there's no repercussions for them.
Of course not.
And that's the thing, right? And, you know, people are in serious financial problems that own these houses that they can't pay their mortgages. The tenants still live there, you know?
And it's so tough. Like, what do they do? I don't know. Like, I feel like the government has hired a bunch more adjudicators, but it's not speeding things up.
No, it's not. And I think the volume of non-payment is just keeping up with the adjudicators. And they're also, you know, they've hired all these people. There's this many hearings in a block. It's 4 hours and you can't do 30 hearings in 4 hours. So they get adjourned and then you wait for another hearing date.
Now,
right?
during COVID, they've gone completely remote and through Zoom or whatever they're using, which platform they're using via video, as opposed to having these hearings in person. Do you think they should go back to having cases heard in person?
I think it was, you know what? I don't know. Because at that time, it's a hard comparison because at that time, we were in the 4 to 6 weeks start to finish.
Okay.
So it was great, but I think I associate that with the timing more than the fact that it was in person or not. So, you know, we used to sit and it was annoying because you'd be there all day watching all these hearings. But, you know, they had a couple mediators that were working and some would get resolved through that. And they would go, when you're on the phone, you don't really know. All you know is you're on hold waiting. Sure. But you don't know what's happening behind. And then all of a sudden you're out of time. They just come back on and say, oh, everyone else for the day is going to be adjourned. So at least in person, you could see it.
Adjourn for the next day? Or adjourn what? For what?
Oh, no, another hearing. They reschedule it. Like, oh, no, it's definitely not the next
months?
day. Could be.
Criminal.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And, you know, and there's no rhyme or reason to the way they call the hearings. There's no way, you know, you don't think, you know, could it be by how much people owe? That would be good, you know, but it's not. It's just random. And then they run out of time and they say, sorry, we'll get a hearing. You get a new hearing date in the mail.
Oh my God. After being on hold all day.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. But when you're in person, at least you could see some progress because people would leave, you know, it would get resolved and you could see some action. So I guess that, yes, for your mental, you know, vision. But when it's on hold, you just sit there on hold and wait and you have to be on the line. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, it was probably better, but I don't know if it was any faster. But I think back then it was just, there was less, right? It was 4 to 6 weeks. You could be evicted. So people didn't do the same thing as they are now. They just didn't, because the reality was much sooner that you could be without a home.
Yes.
Right.
They were
and
taking
now,
as many chances for sure.
Nope. Yep. Definitely not. Definitely not. So it's unfortunate. Yeah.
Unfortunate for sure. So listen, if anyone has questions for you, Patrice, what's the best way to reach out to the team over at Goldmar?
They can call the office, 519-252-5010, or you can send an email to info@goldmar.ca.
info@goldmar.ca. Patrice, as always, thank you, and we'll chat again in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
That's Patrice. Bye. That's Patrice Surette, owner of Goldmar Property Management, on the phone with us there. So, Pretty shocking, isn't it? Could you imagine as a landlord? Well, I've been there. You're trying to help out a tenant who is behind on rent, and next thing you know, they just stop paying, and you're trying to be nice and play nice, and next thing you know, that 1 month arrears is now 3 months and is now 4 months, and you haven't gotten your court date, and next thing you know, it's scheduled for 3 months from there. So next thing you know, it's 7 months. And you're a year in after that, and then you're literally $20,000 in arrears before you have a resolution. It's pretty crazy to think about, right? So, I've had a situation where Nick and I fell again, we were trying to be nice, and we were $16,000 in arrears by the time the hearing came along, and of course it was found in our favor. But then we had to wait for the paperwork to come in after the hearing, which took another 3 or 4 months. And then you have to get the sheriff. So we were a year and a half in by the time the sheriff was hired and the tenant was removed from the unit. So you can understand how that can bankrupt folks, right? Pretty scary. Okay, we'll take a break, come right back with a little bit more right here on the Dan Gemus Real Estate Show.